So, after 3 months on the book of Acts, we're going to go back to the book of Luke. And the book of Acts and the book of Luke were written by the same person, which was Luke. And what we know about Luke is it's thought that he is a physician. We do know that his writings are very precise and very detailed. We know that the book of Luke has one of only 2 of the birth stories of Jesus. His comes from with the Mary side of it, and it actually starts with John the Baptist and Zechariah finding out that John the Baptist is going to be born. And then we hear about Jesus being born. We have Jesus when he's 12 going to the temple in the book of Luke. And then we have John the Baptist baptizing Jesus, and then Jesus goes out into the desert and he comes back, and then that's where all the miracles start happening. He starts healing withered hands. He starts healing people that cannot walk. He starts taking all of the demons that are in people and telling the demons to leave. He's doing all of these miracles. And so he has developed quite a following, literally and figuratively. They are following him where he goes, and they are going, "This guy is amazing. Hey, have you heard? He just brought the widow Nain's son back from death." So not only is he healing people and getting rid of demons, but he is also bringing people back from death. So people are following him all around, and they're going, "We want to be like you. We want to be like you. We want to follow you." And he really has a come to Jesus conversation with them in today's gospel, a literal come to Jesus and saying, "Yeah, you think what I'm doing is so good, but there's something you need to know about it." And so as I was reading this, what it reminded me a lot of are people when they first decide they want to go to seminary. And they're so excited about it because they have usually seen a pastor in their congregation that has come out of seminary, or they've met other people. And so the first thing they do is they call the synod office and they say, "I want to go to seminary." And the synod office, in our case, in this synod, they would talk to Tracy Brashear Schultz. And she would say, "The first thing you need to do is I'm going to send you a packet out about candidacy." Because in the Lutheran Church, what happens is you become a candidate with a group of people that are not pastors, and then you also go to seminary, so you have 2 tracks. And so at that point in time, you would be with the candidacy committee, and they would ask you to, first what they would do is have you come up, and they would say, "You need to go have a whole psychological profile and $1,500. And if you're fortunate enough that you have a congregation behind you, they will pay the $1,500 and say, 'We support you, we want you to do this.'" So you go to seminary, so you have your endorsement and you go. So all of that happens and you're at seminary, and the very first thing you do is you take Greek. 6 weeks of Greek before school starts, and then you get into your first classes, and the first classes you get into are Systematics 1, where they ask you everything that you know about your faith. And the second class you take is an overall about the Old Testament, because we are based out of Jews and the Jewish faith, and so they want you to get this baseline with Old Testament. So basically what they do that first semester of seminary is they break down everything you believe. Break it down. Because like the people that are following Jesus right now, they think they know what it is to follow Jesus, and they think right now what it is to follow Jesus is to have all of your demons removed and to be healed, and to, if you die, to get brought back to life. And Jesus is saying, "Oh, but there's more." And in seminary, that's what those first classes do. So my Old Testament teacher was Presbyterian. And she said, "I want you to know that we are not going to consider Jesus at all in this entire course, because in the Old Testament, Jesus had not been born, Jesus was not alive, so no response to Jesus whatsoever." And she said, "The other thing I want you to know is that when humans were created, they were created as earth creatures, and that all through the Old Testament there is no gender to God. God is God, Yahweh. It is a word that is not said. It is so sacred, it is put out there by itself. If it's spoken at all, it's in a whisper. And so if you turn a paper in and it has God as anything but God or God's self, you will automatically get an F on it. So my first paper, 8 pages long, I read it through and I read it through and I pulled out any him, her, them, they, if, and, but. I was checking it every which way I could. And I was one of 3/4 of my class that got a big fat F on their paper. We were asked to meet with her. And even though I had checked it and double-checked it and cross-checked, I had 5 he's in there, referring to God as a he. So she let me go back and she let me put all of them as God and God's self, and so I got it bumped up. I couldn't get an A because I had gotten an F the first time, but I got a B+. She said, that's the best I'm going to give you. I'd like to tell you I never made that mistake again, but I did because I had been raised with God as a masculine pronoun. So she wasn't trying to be mean, but what she was trying to do is to show that in the Old Testament, God was this word that you didn't even speak. God was so amazing, so unbelievable, that if the name was spoken at all, it was spoken in a whisper and it was set apart. And so what she did is she showed us that it's hard when you come into something and you think you know it all, because trust me, those brand new pastor wannabes going in there, we know how we're going to change the world. We know the justice issues that are out there. We know how we're going to make it where everybody's going to want to come to worship and everybody's going to sing their favorite song and everybody's going to be happy and nobody's going to argue over what time worship starts, and we have got it for everything. And they tell us in those very first courses, you're going to get broken down because you have to see what it's really like. And that's exactly what Jesus is telling the people today in the gospel. It's not all about healing. It's not all about the demons leaving. It's not all about being brought back from the dead once you're dead. It's about serving Christ, and being a Christian isn't easy. And yes, you might have to leave your brother, you might have to leave your sister or your mother or your father, but I want you to know, because a king is not going to go into battle knowing that they're going to lose, and a builder's not going to build a building knowing that the building's not going to stand up. Well, some do, but they're not supposed to. And I do not want you to be a follower of me not knowing that it's going to be tough. And it is tough. And you know, the biggest problem we have today in following Jesus is not the rest of the world, it's us. Because if we follow what Jesus tells us to do, it means we have to be nice to people. It means we have to give something to every person that's on the side of the road. I came out of church one Easter. I had been up since 4:30 in the morning because we had a 6 a.m. service. We had an 8 o'clock service. We had a 10:30 service. We had a meal in between. And I had an airplane flight at 1:30 in the afternoon to fly from Phoenix down to here to the beach house in Galveston. And I thought the day before, I'm going to wear my cleric because it's Easter Sunday, and I want everyone to know Jesus has risen, and in this airport, I'm going to show them with my cleric. And I got to security, and I looked at that line, and I thought, I cannot be nice right now. I am tired. I'm exhausted. I went in the bathroom. I popped that cleric out. I unbuttoned that button. And I thought, I'm going to be like everybody else that goes through security. And you're not going to know I'm a pastor that just led 3 worship services and exhausted. Because it's hard to follow Jesus. Because we want Jesus to look like we want Jesus to look like. We don't want to look like Jesus wants us to look like Jesus. We want, as we were talking about in Sunday school today, to be the person that comes in last and get paid for a whole day. We don't want to be the person that had to work all day for the same thing. We want to be the person that when we are sick can go to Jesus and say, please heal us. But we don't want necessarily the person that lives next door to us that's been a big pain in the butt the whole time be healed. In fact, there's probably times we've thought, ooh, I wish we could spat you with something. It's hard to be like Jesus because we want Jesus to be like us. We want Jesus to look like us, act like us, take our side in everything. And Jesus is saying, oh no, it's hard. Sometimes you have to disagree with family. Sometimes you have to give your very last dollar to the person next to you and trust that the person on the other side of you will give them your last dollar. And yes, when you do that, people are going to say, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have emptied your bank account for them. It serves you right not having any money right now. If you'd taken care of yourself, then there wouldn't have been a problem for you. It's hard. I've experienced it. How could I possibly get upset at the people in security for making me stand in that line so long after I'd worked 3 worship services if I had a cleric in? I would have had to stand there and go, oh, this is so much fun. You have a really nice day, and may God bless you on Easter Sunday. What I really wanted to say is, what is the purpose of all of this? Can't you get us through? I guarantee you that 75-year-old lady in the wheelchair does not have explosives. But they were doing their job. But it wasn't the way I wanted them to do their job. So yeah, following Christ is not always easy. And that's what our gospel says today. Jesus says, I want you to know that not everybody's going to be happy with you. And I want you to know that you're not always going to be happy with yourself, because it's hard to say that you're a Christian and follow me every single day, because we as human beings want people to follow us and do it our way, not do it Christ's way. So on this Labor Day, you don't have to go into the field to pick stuff tomorrow. Hopefully, you can stay at home. Pray for the laborers that are out there, the first responders, the people that check you out at the grocery store or at the drive-thru or any business you use tomorrow. And just remember, it's not always easy to be a Christian, but it's always worth it to be a Christian, even when it makes you uncomfortable. And all God's people say, amen.